Hey YouTube, in this video I'm going to be doing a deck profile on my updated Maiden of deck, or the Maiden deck. If you're using the Japanese one, it's just Maiden. But anyway, the Maiden's got a couple of upgrades. I mean, it's very minor. It's not that much change from the Fighters collection, although they do have a couple more options available to them now. My build is unique in that it still relies on a lot of the older cards. But it still functions really well. I feel like Maidens and Musketeers are pretty much even now in terms of how good each deck is. And this one's definitely more fun since Musketeers have been played so much that you almost don't hear about them that much anymore. You don't really see them anywhere anymore. So for grade 3s, 4 Maiden of Trailing Rose, she's still a pretty good Vanguard. If you have to ride her as the main Vanguard, then you can just stride, and you know, like, if you want, you can like hold on to this. Or the nice thing about her is if you have this a second copy early and there's cards that allow you to get it early, you can essentially rush them. If you know you're gonna ride grade 3 first, and especially if it's someone who's trying to like stick at grade 2 or something, if you were gonna be able to stride first but they're preventing you from doing so, you can abuse the on-hit Persona Blast skill, because oftentimes the opponent doesn't like to guard the twin drives, the early twin drive. At least in most of the matches, like, I don't know, I almost never see anybody guard the initial twin drive from the guy who didn't stride first. But yeah, so 4 Maiden of Trailing Rose, it's really good. Next, 4 Maiden of Rambling Rose. It's the Legion, and this is the Legion mate. But really, I feel like Maiden of Trailing Rose is really the main Vanguard that actually does things for this deck. Kind of like the N in the Cross. The N's really the scary thing that restands. The Cross kind of just does retire things which other Kagura units do. But anyway, Maiden of Rambling Rose, really good unit. I wish her Soul Blast cost was Soul Blast 1 instead of Soul Blast 2, because the deck does run into issues with her and with the whole, like, having to Soul Blast quite a bit, so, and there's not a lot of ways to Soul Charge with this deck, unfortunately, so that's probably the biggest weakness of the deck if I had to point one out, besides other weaknesses that are inherent to the clan itself. For grade 2s, I'm still running my 4 Maiden of Rainbow Wood, because opponents hate this card, because it's an old card, but it's not GB restricted, and its effect is Vanguard or Rear Guards, and it doesn't have to hit a Vanguard to do its effect. So basically, if you don't know what this does, it's basically like Maiden of Libra. When its attack hits, it can hit anything. It can hit Rear Guard, it can hit Vanguard. You can counterblast 2 and draw a card. So this type of card makes it so that you don't really need to worry about running draw triggers. And opponents, it's more of like a big troll card, because if you've got 3 counterblasts available or 2 counterblasts available or whatever, you can play mind games with the opponent, because if you know you don't really want to use the counterblast, then you can just swing to the opponent's 9k in the adjacent column or the other one, and then that's going to really mess with their mind, because they're going to be like, do I really want him to go +2 because I'm going to lose my rear guard and he's going to draw a card, because this card is just really, really good. People really underestimate these old cards that are not GB1 restricted, or not even like really Vanguard loyal, in the sense that they don't require a certain Vanguard. So, Maiden Rainbow Woods, old card but a good card. Next, a new card, and it's also a really good card, is Maiden of Damask Rose. So she is really, really good. At first I was running 3 of her and playtesting her, but then I bumped her up to 4 because I realized that she's actually super good. This type of card can get you out of grade lock. Like, if you don't have a grade 3, you ride this as the Vanguard and you swing, and then if they let it hit, which most likely they probably will, unless they have like 10Ks and stuff and you don't have a proper booster, but most of the time you'll have a proper booster and you're swinging 14 to 9, they don't really want to guard that. So you basically special counterblast 1 Maiden of, and then search your deck for up to any grade 3 with Maiden of in the name, grade 3 or greater actually. So this can search this can do so many things for you. Plus it's Vanguard or Rear Guard. It has the Rear Guard effect just like Maiden of Rainbow Wood. So I kind of have a theme going with the Vanguard Rearguard effects for these grade 2s, but anyway, you can search this if you need a Persona copy. You can search this if you just need stride fodder. I mean, it's just really, really flexible and really good card in stride format. So definitely 4 of for this Maiden of Damask Rose. Next, the only other grade 2 that I'm running is the Maiden of Cherry Bloom. Card from Brilliant Strike, no GB restriction, Vanguard or Rearguard effect. When it hits a Vanguard, you can Counterblast 1 and Soul Blast 1. I don't like that Soul Blast, which is why I dropped it to 3. And then you can search your deck for a Cherry Stone, which is basically a grade 1 equivalent of this, and call it at rest. So it calls it at rest, but it can be used to help set up the field early, like if you ride this early or whatever, or you rush them. So all of these have like on-hit effects. This one can hit rear guards and do its effect, so I feel like this deck it has a lot of pressure potential, really. Next, because the deck is so counterblast heavy, and also because Asha's deck got a new Perfect Guard, I have put my Maiden of Passion Flowers, the PGGs, the unflipped PGs, in this deck. It's Maiden of, so it fits in perfectly. The color scheme also seems to match Rambling Rose. Just wanted to point that out. It's not the same artist, but it's the background color just looks like it just really matches with it. But anyway, so because of all the counterblasting, you know, we run this. And then to handle the problem with the soul being really low, I am running 4 Maiden of Waterpot. This card actually came out in the Fighters collection, so I never took it out. It's still running 4 copies of it. It's really good. It leaves the field though, which I don't like, but I mean, it has to do something, right? The cost, basically it goes in the soul, and you have to choose a normal unit from the drop zone to put on the top of the deck. When your other Maiden of card is placed on R, you can do that to draw a card and countercharge 1. So the soul is basically, it builds soul by it going into the soul. It countercharges 1, so it helps unflip, just like this card. And then it also draws you a card to replace it. So really good card. So definitely run 4 of it. And then next, the Maiden of Cherry Stone just goes with Cherry Bloom. So 3 of each of them is enough, really. And then the last grade 1 is a new grade 1 that they got, Maiden of Rambler. She basically is like a subsidized stride cost. That's the way I kind of think of it. She doesn't pay the complete cost of stride like Padmini does. Basically, she becomes a grade 2. If you want to pay for a stride, if you have a Maiden of Vanguard. So, and then she also has the effect of when she's put in the drop zone from hand for the cost of stride. If you have a Vanguard with Maiden of in its card name, you get to draw cards. So it's actually not that bad. It does essentially turn into a 1 card for stride, because essentially what you do is you discard her and a grade 1 to stride, or maybe it's just like her and her, but in that case it doesn't really matter, but or whatever. But then you just draw to replace one of those 2 cards that you discarded. So it kind of makes up for the difference. Interesting effect, I will say. Definitely a very interesting, innovative card. I feel like this can actually open up the door to some other things later on. Next, for the trigger lineup, 4 Maiden of Daybreak. The stand trigger, it's a Maiden of, so it fits perfectly. Then Maiden of Dimorphotheca. So basically, it's the Maiden of from the trial deck, but it's Maiden of. Maiden of Daybreak was in my Asha deck, but because of the new Bloom stand, I moved this one over here. It's more consistent. Yes, it doesn't go into the soul, just like how the old Watering Elf did. So, but it has more potential, and it's the only card in the deck that's GB restricted. So, but it's a stand trigger, so it doesn't really matter. And then 4 more criticals. Chestnut Bullet, the original one from set 5. And then we've got Sweet Honey, the original one from, I don't know, maybe if they have some other arts, I might actually change this out, but I don't remember if they have another one. And then the starter is Maiden of Noset, or Noiset. I don't know how to say it. It's French. Noisette, probably. But anyway, she is the new starter. Maiden of actually has potential to quite a few. Maiden of, I do want to mention that the promo Maiden of Delphinium is also a pretty good starter for them. Originally, I was running Maiden of Physalis, but Physalis is kind of inconsistent. But she didn't use Counterblast, though. This is really good with Jingle Flower Dragon, so because it can clone names. But Maiden of is not really designed with that kind of playstyle in mind, so this isn't really needed. And also, I want something that can go in the soul. This doesn't go into the soul. This does, so, but it uses Counterblast. So a special Counterblast, 1 Maiden of. During your main phase, you do that, put in the soul. If you have a Vanguard with Maiden of, choose the 2 of your other units with Maiden of in the name. And until the end of the turn, they get, when this unit attack hits, draw cards. So it basically turns, well, it has a hit a Vanguard. It basically turns your grade 2s, if you're rushing with grade 2s, this is perfect. Like if you open up with a bunch of rear guards early, it's basically you like go brave like Xion and just own the opponent. Because it basically forces their hand, because if they don't block any of those attacks, those 3 attacks, you get to draw cards for free, basically, or just for like Counterblast 1 and put in the soul. It is kind of a gamble in the sense that you are potentially minusing 1 straight up for nothing but a chance to draw a card based off of what your opponent does. So there's not a lot of control, but it does have that fear factor, that mind game of kind of forcing the opponent to actually discard cards from the hand. So in that regard, this is a pretty good starter. So, and it's not GB restricted, so you can use it super early when you're rushing at grade 2 or stuff like that. So I like it a lot. Definitely better than the Elmi starter that Asha got. For the trigger lineup, or not trigger lineup, for the stride units, 2 Protector Lotus Maiden of Yggdrasil. This is still a really, really good stride unit for them. It's basically like having a dream spinning Asha for them, for the Maidens. Basically, the only thing about it is you have to Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1. If you have a heart with Maiden of, choose up to 3 units with Maiden of, and then front row, they all get 5k, so it's similar to dream spinning. And they also get a really good effect of auto V or R when this unit attack hits a Vanguard. Look at 5 from the top of the deck, search for 1 with the same card name as the unit on your V or R among them, called to R top of the deck. So it basically has trailing roses effect built in, except it's not persona blasting. So, but the Counterblast, that Soul Blast 1 really is the thing you have to pay attention to. So, but it meshes really well with the grade 1 that came out with it. So that's the main stride that you usually will stride first, unless you just, for whatever reason, don't have a proper setup. Dream Spinning, Ranunculus Asha's in here, just for that play as well. Usually I will not stride this first. I'll always stride this first if I can. This will usually go second or third or whatever, to get that search skill, because that search skill is really good for them, because they don't have as much of that. So two of this and 2 of this. You can stride this twice. You can stride this once. Primavera, because Primavera is, Primavera is just Primavera. It still has a spot on the team. The Jingle Flower play, because it's really good. The deck doesn't focus on cloning a lot, but it's still capable of doing it. And then finally, the Sacred Tree Multivitamin Dragon, because it can still work. I mean, it works pretty good. When the G Guardian unit comes out, I'll probably swap him out. Because in playtesting, I feel like this is more beneficial for the Maidens than this. However, this card doesn't use any Counterblast or Soul Blast, so sometimes I still end up using this as the first stride. If I just, for whatever reason, if I don't have the proper setup. So, like if I don't have the Counterblast or whatever, I'll use this. So he's still a pretty decent card. So anyway, guys, that was my new Maiden of deck. I like it a lot. But I still find myself preferring to play as the Asha one. But this one's probably the equivalent of like the 7 Cs in Grand Blue, because that one's not GB restricted. compared to the Night Rose. So anyway, let me know what you think in the comments below, and as always guys, I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.